Hey Jews, how's it going? I know a lot of the Jews outside of Israel are concerned for the safety of the Jews inside of Israel since October 7th and since Iran attacked us, right? And all that is happening here. But really, actually, we know that since the formation of the State of Israel, there's been terrorist attacks almost continuously. Okay, but now there's a rise in awareness about this and this whole situation. However, now the Jews inside of Israel are very concerned for the Jews outside of Israel with the rise in anti-Semitism. Let me try to put everything in perspective so we understand a little bit more from a Torah perspective what's happening in our lives in this time, 5,784. 2024. Okay, what's happening? What's going on? Can we learn something? Can we know something? Does this make sense to us? Yes, it does. Okay, so we know that there's two basic types of enemies that we have, and two different types of methods that they use: the bow and the sword. Okay, a bow is like a rocket. Okay, it's shot from afar. Okay. That's what's happening inside of Israel. We're being attacked by people who are shooting bows at us, rockets, okay? But there's another enemy of the Jewish people, right, that are being attacked by a sword. But to be a sword, not yet, thank God, but let's clue ourselves in because we have to know what to do before it gets to that point. Because you have to be close to somebody to use a sword. You have to be like a friend to somebody to use a sword on them. Okay, this is basically what happened in the Holocaust. Again, we're seeing certain things come back around in our reality, in our time, when we thought never again. After the Holocaust, we thought we'd set up this state of Israel in our homeland. We'll reclaim it by ourselves. We are the nation of Israel. We'll come back to our land. We will forget about this, this, and this. We will set up an army. And we are now a new kind of Jew that says, never again, no more. We will not let them harm us anymore. We will become a nation just like them. So there's 70 nations in the world, okay? And we are not included in that. God told us that. This is what we learned from the Torah, that there are 70 nations. You can go back and look at literally all of my other classes. I explained this. Where did they come from? What's their purpose? What's our purpose? I have a class called Jew Have a Purpose. I'm gonna link all these things in my description, okay? So what we did when we came back and we decided to set up the Zionist State of Israel, and I have another class called Will the Nation of Israel Please Stand Up? Please go watch that because we talk about the Erev Rav. And these are all things that we need to know in order to understand what is happening in our reality. So I have some background, some other videos explaining all of this. But what we did, instead of separating ourselves like we were told to, and becoming and continue to be the holy nation of Israel, okay, with the Torah laws, we came back and we became a new type of Jew, a Jew that now fights for ourselves, okay, and with anti-Torah laws in our ancestral homeland, okay. So this is a big. A different discussion for a different day, and in fact most of my other videos talk about this. What I'm trying to say here is that we became a 70 first nation, okay? God said there are 70 nations and the nation of Israel separate. What we said is, no, we want to participate in international this, that, and the next thing. We want to mix in, we want to assimilate, we want to do exactly what they did before the Holocaust, which was mix in, assimilate, go to their universities, do all that stuff, and we know how that turned out, okay? It was the neighbors, it was those who were close enough to use a sword on us that turned on us and created the Holocaust, right? Which we said that this is going to now prevent another Holocaust from ever happening, never again, because now we are strong, we are a new kind of Jew, we fight for ourselves, okay? But we can see that that is not true. Okay, so again, other videos, okay? So there are 70 nations, okay? So now I'm talking about the two types of enemies that we have. One from afar that uses a bow or rocket, and one that's closer to us that uses a sword. And this is the outside of Israel, now that I'm talking to the Jews outside of Israel, okay? This is what happened in the Holocaust, is that the friends, the fellow students, your colleagues, your neighbors, everyone there somehow turned on the Jews. So I'm going to read, because I've tried to do this video a few times to try to explain, but I think I'm just going to use this book that I was reading, by Rav Shimshon David Pinchas, Nefesh Chaya, the unique Avodat Hashem of the Jewish woman. Okay, so this is an interesting book. I have some other points that I want to make for women, but I'll hopefully do it in a different class. But basically, he's talking about that we don't really know how to evaluate ourselves as humans, just in general. But he says that on the day of judgment, when that day of judgment arrives, Hashem will evaluate us not just according to our external actions, which might be very meritorious thanks to the social atmosphere and other external factors, but also according to our true inner nature. In other words, Hashem takes a deep look at us and sees not just what we did, but why we did it, and he judges us accordingly. So basically, he's saying here too, because he gives some examples, okay, and I'm gonna read here where it may seem like everything's fine. These are your neighbors, these are your friends, these are your colleagues, these are the good people around you. But are they really good? Are you really good? We don't know the inner nature of a person until society, either because it's society, the norms of society, the morality of the times, that is keeping people in line, basically. So basically saying that if it's okay to hate the Jews, then now you will see that people do hate the Jews. Before, when it was socially unacceptable to express that in any way, then we didn't see that. And we thought that they were our friends, our neighbors, our colleagues, our whatever, and that we were integrated with them and everything was fine, right? We're the 71st nation in the international wonderful world of it's a small world after all, and everything's fine. But now that the social climate has changed, just like it did during the Holocaust and before the Holocaust, we see the inner nature of the nations, of the other 70 nations coming out. And that's, of course, not to say every single person. I know very good and very nice and very caring and very supportive and very loving non-Jews. Of course, we all do. But I'm saying as a whole, as society, the morality changes in society, so do what is expressed, what is okay. Okay, so I'm going to read here. It says here that he says here that Rabbi Michael Dov Weizmandel, Zichrono Livracha, who was an outstanding rabbinical figure of the past generations, made tremendous efforts to rescue fellow Jews from the claws of the Nazis. He developed connections with high echelons in Hitler's regime, and in exchange for large bribes, was successful in stopping some of the train deportations, bringing Jews to the death camps. I personally know Jews who told me that if not for Rabbi Weizmandel, they would not be alive today. In his book, Min HaMetzar, I'm going to write that here. You can check that out if you so wish. Min HaMetzar. Well, he describes his activities. He recounts a meeting he held with a man who represented a certain secular Jewish organization. Rabbi Weizmandel attempted to enlist his support in saving Jews from the death camps. The man replied, "I am an outstanding professor, a leading scientist in the field of chemistry. I have investigated the matter. I can guarantee you that the gas being used to kill the Jews contains opium. They don't feel any pain." Needless to say, this meeting did not bear fruits. If this professor would still be alive and he would say such a shocking thing today, would it just go by? And I'm not talking about today. This book was written in 2011, I believe. It was copywritten in 2011. So back then, even just in 2011, even just 10 years ago, saying something like that would be shocking. I'm not so sure about right now what would happen now, okay? But anyway, so he said, would he not be publicly condemned for his barbarism and falsehoods and exposed as a Nazi collaborator? So how did he dare to say such an outrageous thing back then? The answer is that nowadays it is not acceptable to say such things. But back then, when Jewish blood was spilt like water and the world accepted it as a reality that couldn't be changed, such a statement was socially acceptable. So it says here, too, he goes on to say that he witnessed something himself, was that there was a certain, I'm just going to paraphrase this here, but there was a doctor strike in the town that he was in, and the nurses were not on strike. And there was a bleeding child that came into the emergency room, and the nurse called out to the doctor and said, "What should we do with this child? He needs stitches, but how?" And the doctor just kept walking by and smiled smugly and didn't come to help. And then it occurred to the author here, Rabbi David Pinchas, it occurred to me that if there had been a patient who was in imminent danger of death, the doctor would have rushed over and worked strenuously to save him despite the strike. This is indeed virtuous, but why would the doctor do it? Because it is accepted policy that even during a strike, real cases of life and death are treated nonetheless. Failure to do so is considered tantamount to murder. Let's imagine for a moment that the accepted policy would be different. And even in cases of life and death, there would be ignored when there would be a strike. Then what would this same doctor do? I assume he would smile smugly and keep on walking just as he did with the bleeding child. It would not bother him to do so because his behavior would be considered acceptable. So in the end, it is only the mores of society that cause him to care. It is not coming from his inner nature. The proof is that when he encountered a bleeding child, he didn't even bat an eyelash and even smirked as he walked away. Okay, now let's consider what happened during COVID. Was it not the accepted norm to just stuff a bunch of old people in their nursing homes and whatnot and just let them die? Right, Governor Cuomo, isn't that what he did? And what about in the hospitals while they were dancing and making TikTok videos and people around them were was it not okay to just shut down other things that were proven to work, like ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine, however you say it? All the other acceptable, proven, award-winning medications that have that actually prove to work. Wasn't it acceptable? Was it acceptable to just deny people transplants and cancer treatments and all these sorts of things because of you were not vaccinated? You didn't go along with the narrative that was socially acceptable, and now it was okay to not talk to people who weren't vaccinated. It was, crazy. So you can see how we can be manipulated by the norms of society, and when the norms of society say something is okay, which previously was not okay, then people suddenly act like that, right? So, when we learn the Torah, we know that the laws of morality are not changing. They're static, just like the laws of nature. This is from the Malbim. The laws of nature and the laws of morality do not change over time. That's why the Torah doesn't change. That's why it's not like, oh, it's so primitive to think that, LGBTQ is not some unacceptable. They don't change. The laws of morality and the laws of nature don't change over time. Now you maybe ask yourself, what about climate change? What about the agenda about climate change? I can explain this in another video, and maybe I will, but climate change, there's always a good reason for everything, okay? Because we also know from the Torah that this is the timeline. We're about here, like I said, 5,784. So we're at the end of time. We know from the Torah that at the end of time, God is going to come back into our reality, and it's going to look like natural disasters. Okay, so what are the anti-God narrative going to say? They're going to say it's climate change, and the pinnacle of evolution is now destroying the planet that we live on. Okay, when it's not. That's not the truth. We know the truth. Okay, the truth never changes, just like the laws of nature never change, and just like the laws of morality never change, and that is for a reason. So when we see a breakdown in the laws of in morality in society, certain things now become acceptable, like anti-Semitism again. It is becoming acceptable. And because it's becoming acceptable, you now see more people who are anti-Semitic. And it's not that they were not anti-Semitic before, it was just that it was not normal in society to express that. Okay? So now, says here, again, remember that this book was copywritten in 2011, and he says, and this is why Da'at Torah, the knowledge of the Torah, is so interesting and important. I'm going to read you here what he says on page 234. It says here, there's a true story about a young man in Europe of old who decided to take a non-Jewish wife. His parents tried to dissuade him to no avail. His parents came to the rabbi, who was a very wise man, and told him about this issue, that they didn't want his son to marry this non-Jew, and they wanted his advice. So the rabbi called for the young man. He said to him, do you want to marry her? Yes, answered the young man in a definitive tone. If so, said the rabbi, you should do the following. Hold a party in which you will invite her family. At that party, make sure that there are plenty of bottles of whiskey on the table. The young man agreed, and he went to work right away on arranging that family party. And it was a fancy affair. Okay, so blah, blah, blah. They all got drunk at that party, and they started to get out of control, and they began to taunt the groom-to-be, you dirty Jew. Like a bunch of rowdy, drunken peasants, they proceeded to rowdily curse out the Jews. They expressed outwardly what they had been holding inside themselves the whole time. And that was the end of the engagement. Okay, so he says here that after a while, the young man would have found out on his own what he had gotten himself into, but the rabbi just brought the situation to a head earlier, before they actually got married. Okay, so what's he saying here? What are we American Jews waiting for? Do we have to wait until various immigrant groups join with local minorities and start shouting at us, dirty Jews, with bloodthirsty eyes? Will we wake up only then? Isn't now the time to leave America, or at least wake up and become acquainted with the Torah and acquainted with God, who is the only possible salvation for us? It's not the state of Israel, because you see in the state of Israel, we have other issues going on, okay? We're not integrated into this. It's a small world after all, family of international, global love and friendship, okay? It's going towards the new world order, globalism, which you can see is not a very nice place, especially not for the Jews. Okay, so now there's another question. Are these the Jews of the Torah, the people in the state of Israel? Is this the same group of people that was in the Torah? Yes and no. Yes and no. Okay, so again, I have other classes on that. But if you are a Jew and you come from this line and you know that you are a Jew, we are not supposed to assimilate. And it is not because it's an outdated whatever. It's because there's certain things that we are supposed to do. Go again, see my video, Jew Have a Purpose. And when we do that, we have God's protection. When we do not do that, we do not. And in fact, we have reason for God to destroy us himself. How does he do it? Not by just a bolt of lightning out of the sky and zapping each and every individual Jew that doesn't follow the Torah. No, they also have a purpose in this reality. Okay, and now we are seeing that. So he's saying here, it's just a matter of time. It's just a matter of time, because again, and I'm not going to go through all of this, but our reality is 5-dimensional, 3 physical, 1 spiritual, 1 is time. Have many, many, many videos about this. And so this time has come back again. Looky, looky, it's anti-Semitism time in the world. Okay, but now where are we going to go? We all had this idea that the state of Israel would protect us. If there was anti-Semitism again in the world, we'll just all come to Israel and we'll be safe and we'll be all happy just being the 71st nation with a very strong army, and we will fight because we're a new kind of Jew. We're not the kind of Jew that will get corralled into cattle cars and shipped off to concentration camps. No, we are going to fight for ourselves. And now we're going to look at the blessing that Isaac, our forefather, gave us through Yaakov, who was Israel, and Esav, okay? to Yaakov, he gave us the blessing of this knowledge, okay, which was eventually given in the Torah for us to see reality clearly, okay? That's our blessing, and our blessing and our strength is through our mouths of prayer. Okay? When we are united, when we are keeping the laws and the everything of the Torah, when we are being spiritual, God is with us, and no one can raise a hand against us. God will fight all of our battles for us. Okay? We're not blessed with might and courage and strength of our bows and arrows and swords. No, Esav is. Okay, so Yitzchak had another son, Esav, and Esav was blessed with everything in this world, in this physical world, and to live by the sword. Okay, so he has a blessing from a huge saint to live by the sword, and that when we do not uphold our duty, which is to be the holy nation of Israel, that they will rule over us with the sword, which is actually what is happening right now. Okay, too many of us have strayed away from the Torah. Too many Jews do not keep Shabbat. Too many Jews have no concept of what it is to separate themselves and be and live as a Jew, and instead you have assimilated so much. You've assimilated so completely into the ideology, into the lifestyle, into the society, into the culture of the 70 nations, that you have not kept separate and holy as we are commanded to do. Because at the end of time, there's going to be a redemption for these people, the holy nation of Israel. And we know that everything that comes upon us, every Isurim, all the not so good things that happen to us, all our trials and tribulations, all the whatever, is just to wake you up to call out to God. Just to wake you up to realize that there is a God and that you are a Jew. You are mixed in, and you have to not be mixed in. So how are you going to do that if you feel great mixed in? If you feel great on your campuses and you go to Columbia, and I'm a this, and I'm a professor at Harvard, like you spend $1 million giving it to Harvard because you're just one of them and you're just all mixed in and everything's great. Not correct. That is not correct. And so how are you going to realize that unless God sends you some sort of a sign? What's that sign going to be? It's not going to be a bolt of lightning. It's going to be anti-Semitism. It's going to be the other people in the world waking you up to let you know that you're a dirty Jew. What does that mean? If you're part of the holy nation of Israel, if you're keeping the Torah, keeping the mitzvot, keeping Shabbat, keeping all of those things, then they wouldn't probably even bother with you. And if they did, God would fight our battles for us, because all we would have to do is use our mouths and use that blessing that Yitzchak Avinu gave Yaakov and said, when we cry out with our mouths, when we use our mouths in prayer, when we keep the Torah, God will protect us. So I don't really understand what the question is. You want to be a new kind of Jew? We've tried that since 1948. A new kind of Jew, the Zionist state of Israel, with the Erev Rav leaders telling us now that we do not need God, we do not need the Torah, we definitely don't want any of the Torah laws in the state of Israel, and we're going to be just fine, because never again, okay? That's not true. Never was true, and we are seeing it now that it absolutely is not true. So where are you going to go, Jews outside of Israel? You going to come to Israel? What about the Jews in Israel? Where are we going to go to get away from everything? Okay, so again, back to this book where he says that his father-in-law lived in Poland and he didn't know a word of Polish. Learning to speak Polish did not interest him. In fact, it disgusted him. In truth, that is the way it always was. Then there came a time when the Jews who lived there suddenly joined in with the Polish culture, and they started to go study in their schools. And it was right then, when the Jews started to love Poland, that Poland threw them out and into the inferno of the Holocaust. And so it was earlier in Spain. The Spanish Jews loved their country very much. Spain was a beautiful country, and the Jews wrote poems about its mountains and its rivers. And then what happened? The non-Jewish wife got drunk and threw them out. The great expulsion of Sephardic Jewry took place. It happened because this is a non-Jewish wife. This non-Jewish wife knows the truth, that the Jews are not meant for her, and they are not who she is intended to marry. Must we wait until the non-Jewish wife throws us out of here? We are so comfortable in America, and there are people who say it will never happen again. It is true that it will never happen again. Is it true that it will never happen again? Are we so sure of this? Nowadays, events are taking place that open our eyes. We see that the world is churning and undergoing great changes, and we must wake up before it is too late.